Okay, so we have seen under session management, we have seen something called cookies in a previous class, right? And we have seen how the cookies work across the page and the servlets which we have, right? So today we'll just move on with the next way of session management, which is hidden form field, right? So where we have seen something called, we'll be creating something called HTML element in one servlet so that we can move on with the same thing to the next one, right? That is what is a HTML form field we have. Now, let me create a new servlets. So in this form field, so the field whichever we are going to create here, right, will be invisible because we are going to create an element which is of type hidden, right? So it will be invisible, but we will be using this only to hold the data, right? Whatever we want to make, whatever we want to save, we will be holding that, and whenever we are moving to that resource or some other servlet or JSP or anything, will be passing it on to the next resource, right? So that is what happens here, and this hidden form field will be used only for one next resource, right? As we have seen, something called cookie can be passed on to any resource, right? Once you set cookie, we can use that in any JSP or any servlet across the whole application. But here the scope of hidden field is only till the next request. That's it. We cannot use the same hidden field in the next form because it is a form of query string we are creating using the form field, right? And again, this hidden field can hold only string data. We cannot, we cannot use this for holding the bigger objects. Right? It is not possible to create a bigger object saving because it's a simple element of type hidden actually, right? And this will be better to use this if you feel you just have to pass smaller string data to only to the next resource, not to all the pages, right? If you don't want to actually send it to all, you can actually go to this, right? And one advantage over cookies in hidden field is you don't have to enable anything. It doesn't need any enablement of anything because it's a simple HTML which we have, right? You don't have to enable cookies or no, it doesn't matter. It works always, right? So that's our main thing. But only we can say disadvantage is this hidden field works in a server side. It has to be maintained at the server side because it's an HTML, right? It has to be rendered from the server side and should be pointed on to the client side. That's what happens here. So here what we are doing is one more disadvantage of this is we have to create a separate form for each and every page, right? And only text will be shown here. That's what happened. But yes, for the smaller users, we can actually go for a hidden field, right? So let us see how we can actually create that. So let me create two servlets here. Let me call hidden field serv1. So there is my servlet 1 here. So let me create one more servlet. Servlet 2, right? So let me shift. So hidden field 1 is the first servlet where, so I'll be passing through my page 2. So in my page 2, I'll give the action as hidden field serv1. Well, what I want to do here is, whenever I click on submit in my page 2, right? So my name will be going in a query string, right? So what I'll do, I'll just handle that query string over here, right? So that query string data is valid only till one resource, which is my first servlet 1, because I'm using my first servlet, right? But it won't be visible or it won't be passed on to the next servlet until we write a logic, right? So what we are going to write is, we are going to write a logic of a hidden field, right? Now, first let us handle that query string over here. Let me go for try catch. So here, so first let us get the data. So in order to get the data, so what we'll do, we'll just say user is equal to, so we have the data in our request, so we'll just go for get parameter, right? So in order to read the query string, you have to go for something called get parameter, right? So the parameter which is there for this is username. There is a username parameter which we have. So till this part we have got the data, whatever we want to get it from the resource, the first resource, right? We have got the username to my element here. Now let us print that up. So this is one element. Let me just divide this up. So here what we'll do is we'll just try to set, we have content type of, we have something called text or HTML, and then we'll get some print writer out is equal to, so we are going to write it on our response dot get writer you have, and then we just say out dot print so let's say welcome, and we'll just say user. So in this part, so what we have done is, we have whatever data we have got from one resource, which is page 2, we have sent it to the servlet, and the servlet we have read the data, and we have used the data as such. Now the next part is, we have to send this data to the next field. So we cannot read the same parameter over here. So let me do that first. Let me write the same code over here, and we'll show you that it won't work first. Okay. So I've written this get parameter. So here I have to write a form, let us say. So in order to go from one resource to other resource, you have to have any link over that, right? So let us create that link. So we need some out.prints. So let me take that out.prints. Maybe this many. So here what we'll do, we'll create a form here. So this part we have already seen. So action is equal to, we'll take up action of this servlet, second servlet, and then we have to have an input submit. Input type as submit, because if you submit something, then only it will go to that, right? And then let's say value is go to next. It's a very simple element which I have taken, which is a submit type button, right? We close it over here and then close the form. Right, we are just taking a simple so that we can move from this resource to the next one. Okay, so here we are actually reading it again, right, and we are trying to print. So this one, what we'll do here is we'll just take it here, so that in my finally I can close the out dot close, right? And here what we'll do, we'll just print the same thing here. We'll try to print if the data is being passed from servlet 1 to servlet 2, we'll print out, and if there is an exception, we'll just print that over here. There is an exception. And we'll just print that exception. We'll just say e dot get message. Right. So this is what we are doing here now, right? So we're just taking an input type, right, and we're just clicking on that, and we're trying to go back here to servlet 2, and we're trying to read something, the same field which is being passed from the first resource, and we're trying to use it. So let us see what happens when you do this, right? Let me run this page. Let me start my server now. So I have my this. Let me start my server. So server has started. Let's go back here and just say page 2. So I already have this page 2, right, which is my project name is Servlets, right, and the resource which I'm looking over is something called page 2, right. So that is what I have actually taken it over here, right. Now here let me give name as tree, some name here, right. So I'm giving it in the first page, and when I click on this, it will go to the next servlet. Click on this, right. Now you can see that here in form free servlet 1. We have gone to servlet 1, and you can see that there is a query string being formed with a key called username and value tree. That's how you can see here, welcome and the name. Yeah. Now let's go to the next servlet. When I click on this, now you can see it shows nothing. It shows null, right? Because the same field, we don't have any medium to send the same data into next server. That is what happened. So it shows null, because in this parameters list there is no username kind of, right? So that is where we have to create something called hidden field over here. So how to create a hidden field is, we have something called you have to create an input of type hidden, right? And what is the specialty over here which you have to mention is, you have to mention the name, because the name is a field which will be used to create a query string. So in this name you have to mention this same token, whatever you have mentioned here, username, or you can also do any other. First let me just give you this part, right, the same part, and then I'll show you that. Okay? So this part what we have given is, you have a type and you have a name, and then you have to give the value part. And value part, as this value is dynamic, right, whatever you are mentioning here, whatever the data you are giving in this page, in the first page, right, as such, this page, right, is being read at the first servlet, which is this servlet, right, and we have to populate the same value over here. So let's make it dynamic. Let's make it as a string append. We'll just say it as user, right? So it will become dynamic now. Whatever data we are passing, so we are also passing it to the value, hidden field value, it's hidden element. The name is username, which means I'm persisting the same key, and I'm sending the data, which is the same data which I've got from the first resource. That is a change what I've done, right? So let's go back and see what happens now. So I reset my server, just refresh this page. Now here, let me give some name, some name here, right? So let me click on go. So you can see I'm at first servlet, hidden field server 1, right? I'm at first servlet Sam, right? And then I will go to next, click on this. Now you can see the name will persist, and also here you can see that I have got my key. This is a second servlet, right? And I've got my query string being prepared for me, and for that I'm getting the same value. So this is something which is a hidden field. Now in my first servlet, you can see that you can only see the button, right? In my first servlet, I've created two elements inside my form. One is an input element which is hidden, and then one is a button which is a submit button. You can see only one element, right? You cannot see this field, because this field is something which the page don't even create any space, right, or anything. It will just keep it in the body part. That's it, right? And whatever data is coming up here, I'm just assigning to this part. And whatever is there, I'm just on click of this, the form is automatically converting this name field into a query string, which is called as a username is equal to this value. Now here there is no force that you have to use the same key. You can use any key here, which is, let us say USR. I'm just giving USR, let us say, right? The only thing what you have to do is, even in your second servlet, you have to use the same thing. That's it. It's a minimum thing which you have learned, right? A query string. Whatever query string you are creating here, all the name is a key, right? You have to use the same here to read the data. That's it, right? Now let's go back and see what happens here. Here, page 2. So let me give something here and click on go. When you click on go, you can see in my first servlet I can see a button and the name being printed. When I click on, so you can see here the actual query string is username is equal to some name. When I click on go to next, now you can see name is being persisted. It is some other key value here, right? The basic requirement is met in your own way, right? You can also do that. There is no issue on that. You can also do that because your resource will stay only till next servlet only. Again, you cannot read in one more servlet. Let me create one more servlet here, because this type of session management which you are using for hidden field can be used only to one part. Let me create one more servlet which is hidden. So, and let me create the same code here in my duplicate, and let me create a simple maybe link here, right? So this time I'll just create a link out.print let us say I'm creating an anchor as such. Link in the sense anchor is equal to href of close of a, and let me just say visit the next something. So in this href I have to give the value of my resource, right? Like this. This is my small link I've given, which will take me to the next servlet, which is servlet 3. And in this servlet 3, again what I'm doing is I'm trying to read the same field which I've retrieved here. Let's see what happens. Right? Now let me restart the server. Go back to this. Let me check page 2. Right. And let me give something. Click on go. Now you can see it's my first servlet. Click on this. Now you can see my second servlet has gone. It says visit next. When I click on this, it says null again. Right. So here hidden field is something which is persisted only across, right? Only across the next element only, and that too you have to have a hidden field written in your logic. Right? So this is something which is called as a hidden field way of session management. This is one way of persisting data across the data, and this can be used only for textual based things. Right? It cannot be used for objects. So we cannot use the same thing for actually persisting the complete object into the next one. Right? So that is what we have here. Right? Now let's go back to the next one, which is URL rewriting way of thing. So this is something which is again some interesting part where you will be seeing something, passing data into some other page again or servlet again, right? Remember guys, these are something which are common to both servlets, JSPs, right? And the same session will be used across even in some of the frameworks like struts and all, right? So this is something which is common for all that's why I'm just taking all the things here itself, right? Yeah, let's go back to the next one, which is URL rewriting. Let us see how this works. Now again, URL rewriting is something instead of your form fields, right? You will just, whenever you want to go to the next resource, what we'll do is you just create your own user-defined query string here. Let us see how we can create our own query string. Right? Let us check out that part. Now let me create two more servlets here. Let me call it as URL rewrite serve 1. Let me take a new servlet here. Let me call URL rewrite serve and Perfect. So I have two servlets here, and now this time we'll do one thing. We'll just take two elements. One is username, and let us also take password here. Right. So username we have, and then let me take one more input of type right. Either you can take a text, right, where you can see the password, right. What I mean is this, and a value is, sorry, not value, and the name is like ID type. Let me call it as password, and let me just say break here, maybe 2 breaks. Now here, if you, oops, password here, right. So when you do this part, so what happens here is, when you go to page 2 here, oops, one sec. So now you can see that there are two text boxes, right? Now let me just say it as something, so that it will look much better there, right? You have a name and a password, right? Now here I can enter name and I can also see password. Now this is something which is a text type, right? So passwords will be in this way. So you can actually make that field of type something called, you have something called password field also. You can do this, and this type is introduced from HTML4. It was not there before that HTML, right? So this is something you have type password of input in HTML from HTML4, right? Now if you give this password type, right, go back and refresh this page, and now you can see that password will be an encrypted one, right? It will show in some other way, right? That's a basic difference which we have here, right? That's it. We can just say password so that. Okay, fine, no issues. So that is what we have here, which is name and password, so that we'll see whether both the things are being passed or not. That's what we're gonna see here. So let me arrange this. Okay, that is better. Now let's go back here to my servlet one. Let us see whether we can remove these two and print it up here. This is straightforward because I'm taking my form, and in my action I have to give this servlet name, right? Because I'm going from this servlet to this one, right? So that's why I'm taking my form of my action as URL rewrite server1, right? Where whatever I'm sending over here, I will have to capture over here, right? So let me just write that logic here. I can copy paste the whole logic what we have created before, right? But why I'm writing again and again is just keep these things in mind, guys. That's why I'm writing again, so that you can understand what actually I'm doing. That means a user is equal to, so I have to get it from request, because all the parameters what I'm getting to this servlet are in my request object, which is my HTTP servlet, right? That's why I'm using request dot get parameter. So here we have to give the key. Now my key, first one is username, so let me copy that and paste it here. So this is my user, and let me take my string password as request dot get parameter of something called, you have a password name, and the definitive name here. So with this I have read my details called username and password. Right? Now let me show these things. So let me create a print writer. So before that I have to set my response, set content type as something called text or HTML. Okay, this is my content type, and then let's create a print writer. Is equal to response dot get writer. You have this. You have a response dot get writer, and then we just say out dot print. We'll just print the details, which is, let us say, welcome, space, we'll just say user, and then we'll just create some braces here, and we'll print the password. Now, obviously we don't show password, but yes, I'm just taking it here so that I want two values to be passed. You can make, maybe you can just make it as an ID or some other thing, right? That doesn't matter, right? Now here, let me just, so till this part, what we are doing is, whatever we are getting from the form, which is HTML, we are just reading it up and we are showing the same data in the servlet, right? Now what we have to do here is, so we have to send the same data. As such, we have username and password. We want to send the same data to the next servlet using something called URL rewriting. The URL is something called URL rewriting, right? Now here, let us create that layer here, how we can actually send that. Now URL rewriting is something which means, basically we have used something called anchor field, right? So we'll use the same thing, like anchor element in the sense, so we used a, close a, there's my anchor field, right? So let me just say break here, 2 breaks maybe, and in this anchor field I'll just say make a visit to next, right? Now here in this A, there is something which is very important, right? Don't worry, these spaces will be accepted by HTML when we actually run this. I have my href. Now in this href, we have to mention what exactly you want to do. Now here, what I'll do is, I'll have to, first thing is, I have to mention to which resource I want to go. So this is my resource, and then you have to create a, now this means you are actually giving href in the sense you are giving your URL to where you want to go. We have already seen something called, in my anchor field, I can also give something called google.some page, the complete other page other than my application, right? You can use anchor link for that. And also, if you are actually moving in a same project, right, you can directly mention your resource name, right, which will obviously directly go to your resource, which means you're actually mentioning your URL, right? So in this URL, what we'll do, instead of calling this, what we'll do, we'll append this with something called question mark, which means we are going to create our own something called query string. Let me call it as USR. This is my key, and I want to give the value, right? And the value, we'll just see what value you can give, and ampersand, because we want to give one more value, right? Let us say pwd is equal to some value. Now here, what we say, user, I want to give user as some user field here, which is user field, and then I have password. I'll give password as my password field, right? This is something which is called as a rewriting of a URL. You are creating your own URL, right, so that you can actually move the data to the next part. That is what happens here, right? You have given your resource where to go, and this part is something which is very important, the question mark, and then this part is something where you are actually mentioning your data, where you are giving your key, ampersand, giving your password, right, is equal to, is something which is a delimiter between your key and value, and ampersand is something which is a delimiter between the complete query string parts. So that's what we do. Now let's go back to user 2 here. Now here we will be getting that part as a new details here, right, which is, I'll again take something called string, which is user, let us say, and I'll just say request, because this request, right, this part of data query string will become a request to the second server, right? So that's why I'll get my request and just say get parameter of something called key. So here in this situation, my key is USR to get the username. So let's call it as USR. And then we have string password is equal to request dot get parameter of something called, what is the key we have given here? It's PWD. So let's go back and this key PWD. Right? So with this part we have read the data. Now and then let's go and print this part. So for that printing part I can use this content types again, okay, which is my response dot set content type is that HTML, and I'm taking my print writer. Maybe you can just say out dot close. Don't forget this. So this password is my password. Okay. So that is what we just said. So let's say in second servlet, break it up and then we'll just print this. That is what we have in the second servlet, and we are printing the same data, right? So this is what we have something called rewriting of your URL and sending the same data into this. So let me just rebuild this part. Let us see how it runs over here. So in the page 2, let me give name here, let me give some name and some password. Right. Let me click on go. Right. Now you can see it's asked for a password because it is, yeah. Now you can see the name, you can see here is John, right? And the password we have sent it this. And let me click on visit next. Visit next will take you to a second server, right? Okay, so there is a problem with this spaces. I haven't done control space here. One sec. So this is a problem with the spaces. When you do this, it should take out. Anyways, it is not taking out, so don't give any spaces. Simple as that. Because code is string, even the space will take it as a consideration, right? That's right. So user is equal to, you'll get a name, ampersand password is equal to, you'll get a name, and you have a password. Perfect. Right. Now let's go back, restart this server. Go back to page 2 here. Now let me give the name and some password here. Click on go. So this is my username and password we have. Click visit next. Now you can see it is in second servlet and I've got my data. Now you can see here this part of data we have created our own, right? Where I have a John, a user and password. And whatever we're actually sending this data, right? We're actually getting the same thing here. Now if I change my password in my query string here, you can see here, if I change something here, right? I've changed and click enter. You can see it changes. Because it all depends on the current request. In this current request, this query string will become the input to the current servlet. Okay? You can change this name. You can do that. Let us say you have some name, then enter. You can see the name changed and the password changed. Right? It also works in that way. We can just give this to any user so that whatever you want, you can just change. Right? That's what it happens. So that's how it works any user. So this is how you can actually use something called URL rewriting path, where you're actually creating your own query string to pass the data from one server to other server. Right? So this is all about your URL rewrite. Yeah, so you guys have any doubt in these two or in cookies, guys? So if these things are okay, then we'll move on to the next one called HTTP session, which is very important. And it is again, it's a very simple, which you are going to see. Yeah? Yeah, Ujjwala.
So that anchor sign we use for URL writing, right?
Yeah.
Means if we want to write URL, okay, that's the only time we can use that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any other questions till this part of cookies? Any of these three? Okay, fine. So if things are fine,
I created a server yesterday and
go on. Yeah.
Srinath, yeah, and
Okay.
created a servlet also.
Mm-hmm.
So until now it's fine. Like your videos are very good. They are teaching as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if I have any questions, I will ask you next time.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No issues. Yeah, you can. Anytime you can ask me. Yeah. Okay. So any other doubts, Johnny, Sunita, Sai, Prakriti?
I'm good, Srinath. Thank you.
Okay, that's cool. I'm there. Okay. So if things are fine, so let's move on to the next one, which is mostly used one, HTTP session. And guys, whenever you are using sessions, right, you should be very careful, right? You should not expose some things which are, let us take an example of cookies itself, right? Cookies are something which are completely saved at client side, right? So client side, in the sense, it is very easy to retrieve the data whatever you are saving in cookies in a current session, right? We can actually hack that. That's why whatever you feel that is a not non-sensitive data, go for cookies or any of these, right? And if you feel that something is secure, right? Uh, like let us say you want to save the token of username and encrypted password, right? Don't save it in any of these data cookies, or never save it in hidden field or URL at least, right? Never. You should never. But at least cookies, yes, you may save user. Like it's not going to if your requirement makes it okay. Otherwise, go always for sessions, HTTP sessions, because this is something which is saved in a server, right? So this segment, it will create a separate space for you where you can actually save your data, right? So this is completely created in a web container of your web server, right? Any server. It can be Tomcat or web logic, JPOS, WebSphere, any server which it supports web container for servlets, right? It can give you some space to save the session. And that's why that space is not permanent. That space contains some timeout. It will give you some time to save the data, right? And yes, you can actually control even that part, but by default, it won't give the permanent storage for you. And that's what happens, right? So that is why we have something called session timeout over here, right? And basically, we go for these sessions again, which is particularly HTTP session, to make a unique identifier for each person. That's what, anyways, the whole agenda behind the session management is to make my web server understand that a user whoever is logging in or whoever is trying to get some other page or some other servlet or some other image, right, is the same guy who has already been logged in, right? Because we have to create the intelligence to the server or to your website so that your web container knows that you are not the person who is a fresh guy again, right? Right? So that's why we go for session manager. Among them, we have something called HTTP session here. Now here what happens is, so whenever any request comes to a container, right? So it indeed will create a session ID. There will be a separate session IDs will be created for each and every request as such. That session ID will be passed down to all the servlets, all the JSPs, because each servlet, whenever, let us say there are 4 different servlets, right? And if you have got a request to your web container, let me show you that in this part. So what happens here is no. Okay, let me take this. There is something which is very important again, some theory part. So let us say you have a web container. You have a web container which is, I can say, Tomcat, which is web container here, and you have all your resources. Let us say you have your servlet 1, servlet 2, and servlet 3. Let us say S1, S2, and S3. So these are servlets, right? Now what happens here is, whenever request comes, let us say you have a request 1, and you have your request 2, right? Now what happens here is, your web container in turn will create, the first thing that it will do, it will create two different session IDs for you. Pertaining to this, it will create one session, let us say session SS1, and pertaining to this, it will create one more session, say SS2. And then it will send it to the servlet. Again, it will send it to the servlet. Now here what it does is, in our servlet, for each request, it will create a separate thread. If you remember, servlet is a server-side scripting which will create a separate thread for each request. So my servlet one, for first request, will create a separate thread, and the same way, when second request comes, it again creates a second thread. Same way, whenever this servlet calls this, again it will create two threads again internally. Again when it sends, again it will create a second thread. That's what happens. So this creation of threads will be taken care by your web container. Right? Now whenever process is done, whenever the response I have to send back, right, again it will follow the same thread to give it back to the same thread. Again same. And this thread will give back to the session, the response. And this session will give back the response to the user. So that is how the session works. This mediator works. Now here, that's why you would have seen this part. Whenever you just click on the website, right? So let us say you have sent a request, and till some time that you are not getting response. So at that time, what you will get is some timeout response, or server is not responding. Right? So who is actually timing it out? Your session is timing it out. In that case, you are not creating any sessions or something, but web container is creating a separate session for you, right? And it has sent some request to servlet, let's say. But let us say among these servlets, it is taking so much of time. Let us say there is so much of DB processing is going on, inserting into DB, reading the data, and creating so much of very big data, and it is taking so much of time, out of permissible time, in order to give the response back. At that time, what happens? Your session itself will create a new response, as such, either a 404 or 501 response, which is error response, and it will give it back to the same user. That is what happens whenever you get timeout or something. Anyways, we are getting response from web container, but who is generating those things is your session. So that is what happens here. That's how. And now what we are going to do here is, we are going to use the same space of session, and we are going to save some data in this. That is what we are going to do in our main space, right? Where at that time, so this session is mainly, during the first case, during the request and response case, this session stays till request is entered and response go back. That's it. So till that time session stays. But if you store something, right? If you store some data, right, it will stay until the permissible time of the session. That's what happens. That is where you are going to actually save. And you can see here, your clients are over here. This is my client and client. But whenever you say session, it is actually saved in your web container. That is what it is called as web container, which will be in a web server. Right? So that is how your session will be saved, and that is how your session will be timed out as such. Right? Now we'll see how we can actually create sessions, and again this session is something which can be used across the whole application. This is something which is in the scope of the whole application for some time, for some we call it as timeout, some permissible timeout time, right? So that is what it happens. Now let us see how we can actually create this session. This session is in different ways. We have to get this in different things, because whenever you are actually sending the data, if you want to set the data, right, will be setting in some way, and if you want to get the data, will be getting in some way, right? We'll see how we can actually get that session. Now let me create username and password. Let me take the same servlet. Let me create two servlets here. Let me call this. I'll just show you the basic one-to-one servlet, and tomorrow we'll create one more servlet for that, right? Let me call it as HTTP session serve1. This is my first servlet, and let me take my next servlet, which is my HTTP serve2, right? So this is my second servlet I have. Perfect. Now in this servlet, let me first get the data of whatever the page is sending to me, and let me replace this HTTP serve session 1 over here, because my action changes, right? So let's go back here. Let me just try catch. So this part here is we are going to set it as this. So in my debug, what I'll do here is I'll just say, yeah, I have to get my data, which is string user is equal to request dot get parameter of the key, which is username over here, and let me take the same thing here, which is your, let us say, password, and the key is password here. So till this part we have got the data, and then we have to show the same data here. So let me just go back to the response part. Set content type, or we have something called text or HTML, and then we have a print writer dot is equal to we have response dot get writer. Always remember, print writer is only for response, because printing is something which can be done on in a response stream, right? So we'll just say out dot print of info servlet, and another break here. And then, so after this, first we'll just close it up. Okay. So, and then what we'll do here is we'll just say out dot print of, we'll just take the same welcome this user here, we'll just say the password here. Okay. So this is something which is here, welcome, the username and password which is printing over here, right now. So let me break this here. Now this part is something which we have already seen. There is nothing which is happening here. Now here, so what we want to do here is we want to go to the next servlet, let us say, right? Now how we can actually go to the next resource is very simple again. We just have to take one more print and create an anchor link here, right? Just say A here, there is my anchor link, and just say go, click on here, the dots, email href is equal to this resource, right? So this will take you to the next servlet, right? Now here, there is something which we have written in the code to go to the next servlet. Now we'll see how we can actually create something which we can actually save the data into session. Now in order to save any data into session, right, you have something called HTTP session class, right? HTTP session, which you can see it is a session class in our HTTP.HTTP session, which comes under the Java X servlet, right? Which is completely written in Java itself, right? So let me take it as hello session first is equal to, now what I want to get here is I want to save some data into session, right? So which session I have to save here? Now I'll be taking my request field dot, you have something called get session. You can see here there are two different methods to get the data. Now here what is that is, you have one direct session. Now what it does is, if there is already session being created, it will get the session, or if it is not there, it will create a new session. That is what happens here, This is one method of getting the session. We have one more method, which is, you can see, get session of some parameter. We'll see this part when we go to the next survey. We'll see this part. We'll also see, right? This is also something which is very important, right? Now here this session will actually give us a current session of the complete object. As such, you can just think, whenever I say request.get session, which means I'm actually talking about this cloud, right? It will give us this. Now, how can I use this session is, now it is very simple to get this. You have something called, if you want to set some data, now we will be using something called set attribute. You can see that it has got one set. We have already seen this now, servlet context, if you remember, right? Servlet context to set some cookies. Same thing here, we have a set attribute to set some data into my session here, right? So what I'll do, I'll have to give some key. Let us say I'm giving some key called USR, right? And then the data, let me give the data as my user. Right? So this is something which I've set into my session. The same way, I'll take one more session, which is set attribute of my password, which is PWD, and password I'll give it as the password. Now this is how you can actually set your session, right? It is very simple, but yes, it actually gives a lot of thing here. Now you can see here, whenever I go to set attribute, right? Oops. Now one sec. Whenever I say set attribute, now you can see here, we can actually say the complete data, right? Complete data into, complete object into this. We'll see the object part also, right? We'll also see the object part, right? So this is how you actually set session into your servlet, right? So this part is something which is setting. Now we'll see how to get the session and how to create a session with a bigger object. We'll also create a bigger object, and we'll see whether the object is being read in other. We'll see how to create an object, what object we can actually send, what are the different things we can send, right? We'll see all those parts tomorrow, right? This is something which we'll see. We have just seen a basic part. We'll see the big picture of SVP session tomorrow, right? So let us wind the class here, right? So if you guys have any questions, you can ask me now.